Good morning, everybody. All right, welcome to another Thursday Bloodhound Workshop. And give me a moment here to look at the names in the room. And yeah, there's, I think, a couple of names I don't recognize off the top of my head here. So let me just check to see if there's anybody new to these workshops here today or anybody who's fairly new. And the question is, if you're newish, would you like to hear the workshop introduction? All right. So the workshop introduction is I'll explain what we do in these workshops. More importantly, what we do not do. And then, secondly, I'll explain how the recordings work. And lastly, I'll explain what custom indicators I can install into my machine in case you do have a question about using, a custom indicator there with Bloodhound or Blackbird. So, all right. So if anybody would like to hear that introduction there, let me know, and I'll get that out of the way first. And so while I'm waiting on that, well, actually, I'm waiting on more than just that. There were no emailed in questions today to get the workshop started. So, gentlemen, I'm leaving it up to you guys to ask the first question and kick this workshop off. All right. So again, guys, no emailed in questions to get things started. So just go ahead and fire away into the questions and answers window there, the Q&A window, and that will actually get things started here for this workshop. Well, there are a good number of people in the workshop today, so I'm sure somebody must have a question out there somewhere. All right, well, this could end up being a very short workshop. So again, let me just repeat myself here. I'm just waiting on the first Bloodhound question to come in for today. All right. So in the meantime, gentlemen, I'm just going to mute my microphone while I'm waiting on that first question. Well, I'm kind of surprised. This is a rare event where there's never any questions within the first 10 minutes here. So I will keep the workshop open at least until 20 minutes after the hour, just in case there's any, latecomers, um, that have some questions. But yeah, if I don't see any questions by 20 minutes after the hour, then yeah, this could end up being one of those rare times where there's just no questions for today. And yeah, so if no questions by 20 minutes after the hour, then I'll just we'll wrap it up early. So, although let's see here, it looks like Doug might have a question for me. All right, let's see what Doug has. Okay. Um, yeah, so Doug has a question about an SRSI indicator. All right, I'm not familiar with that one. And it's just a slow RSI. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if it had something to do with an RSI. All right. Yeah, so he wants to know when these two RSI lines are less than 2 units away. Yep, 2 points or narrower. All right. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And so, just to be technically correct here, Bloodhound doesn't do math. So Bloodhound's not going to calculate what the delta is, between two plot lines. So yeah, so yeah, just in case, just to make sure that nobody's thinking that Bloodhound's going to actually return the delta between two plot lines or anything like that. So, all right, so let's get this indicator on the board so we can see what it looks like. And actually, I'm not even sure if I have that on. Let's see. Nope, doesn't look like I even have it. Well, I have a Connors RSI, but I don't have this slow RSI. Yeah, so sorry about that, Doug. Is there any kind of substitute that you would like to use? Like maybe two RSIs? Oh, or is it just the stochastics RSI? Well, that only has one plot. Hmm. Yeah, so Doug, if you want to throw an example using maybe two RSIs with two different periods that might mimic this slow RSI. And yeah, all right, Doug is calculating here for an alternative. All right. And I guess well, Doug is figuring out an alternative here. Let's go to Lizard Trader's website here. Yeah, where is it? There we go. All right, here's their website. And there it is. All right, the slow RSI. So it must be just two RSIs. Yeah, it's my guess. A lot of people just mash two indicator or the same indicator together twice and call it something new and fancy. Yeah, so it looks like an RSI and then a smooth out one, a smoothed RSI. Let's see here. Let's see what it said. Oh, I see. All right, so there is a slight modification in the formula there. Yeah, so my guess, the 80, I'm sorry, the 20 and the 80 are probably these line values, although I don't see the 50 in there. So my guess is maybe the 16 and the 14 are the two RSI periods for the two different lines there. And maybe a third value might be the EMA. Yeah, so maybe it's actually 10 and 14, and the 6 is the EMA period that, yeah, for the EMA in there. All right, well, yeah, let's just try and fake something here. And all right, yeah, so let's just put two RSIs on the chart and see what happens. Let's see here. let's see here. All right, so I think I've got a name here for this. There we go. So essentially, we're just looking for consolidation of two plot lines. All right, so let's grab the comparison solver. Yep. So the comparison solver is most commonly used to identify if input A is above or below input B. But, with Bloodhound version 2, we added some other conditions here that we can check for. So if we go into the rules window here, I'm just going to jump straight to the answer by going into the rules window there. And I'm just waiting for it to open up. There we go. We can use this equals symbol, right? This one line equal another plot line, right? Within, some kind of value here. So let's see what are we working with? Yeah, I guess 2. I think 2 actually will work for this indicator here. So, yeah. So when you're working with indicators in their own subpanel, right? These indicators don't have ticks. There's no such thing as a tick value, right? Ticks only applies to price, or ticks only applies to the instrument that you're trading, right? So ticks do not apply to indicators on their own subpanel, right? Now, of course, if the indicator was designed to plot on price, then ticks can apply to indicators that plot on price, but if you forcibly move an indicator on the price, that doesn't force that indicator to work with ticks, all right? So, yeah, so only use ticks when the indicator was designed to run on the price panel there, right? All right, so there's 2 points. Click OK. All right, now we need to put in the actual indicators here instead of the SMAs. So, all right, let's go in here, open up the indicator window, and use the little search tool. There we go. RSI. The first one was 50 and 10, and I am using the average lines there to get that smoother effect. All right, plug that in. And we're going to do the same thing for input B. Plug in that RSI there. All right, RSI. And the other indicator was 80 and 10, like so. And all right, well, actually, yeah, 10 or 2 points is very common here, as we can see. All right, so let's cut it in half. Let's go down to 1 there. And yeah, there we go. Let's see. Something looks kind of odd here. Obviously, that looks really narrow. Let's see. Average line. Average line. All right, just double checking my settings here. And yeah. All right, well, when in doubt, let's do a reload. All right, let me try this another way here. All right, yep, so I got something set up wrong here because obviously we can see those two dots are really close to each other, closer than those two dots. And those two dots are like sitting on top of each other. Yeah, and yeah, and all these dots are closer than those two dots. So let's see here. It's just a matter of what did I set up wrong? All right, so that's on the average. And let me guess, the 80-10, I didn't select the average line. So there you go, right? It's always a simple mistake somewhere. So there we go. All right, that should radically change everything. There we have it. That's what we should expect to see. All right, there we go. And yeah, and if we look at the chart, right, that definitely looks like some consolidation there. You know, even though we had an up move, that's really not much of a strength in a move there. Not over a 50 or 80 period, right? Still within the ranges up here. And when it gets down here below that lowest low, that prior low point, there we go. Now we're kind of breaking out of a range there. And so, you know, the potential RSI is saying, hey, you know what, we could actually have some strength here. So, all right, anyways, so there we go. So, again, the key answer to this question is in the rules window here, we want to use the equals condition there. So, now if you try to identify if something actually equals something else exactly, then all you need to do is just put in 0. 0 and 0. And that's how you can identify if two indicators actually equal each other out to, let's see, what is it? At least 2 decimal points. It could be 3 decimal points or 4. So Bloodhound does have a internal rounding mechanism, because a lot of people were saying that things were calculated wrong, because if you bring up NinjaTrader's data, right, data thing, it only goes to 2 points, right? Whereas really these indicators go all the way out to 8 decimal points. NinjaTrader's just clipping or rounding off. And since people wanted to use the data box as saying, hey, the data box is what's correct, not 8 decimal points. So Bloodhound does have an internal rounding mechanism there. So that way, when you say I want to see something equals, and the data box rounds it off, and it looks like it's equals, Bloodhound will agree with the data box. Data box is rounding up 2 decimal points there. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I did cancel that. So, all right. Yeah. And then also something similar along these lines here would be the expansion contraction there. So let's plug that in. All right, so I'm just going to get these indicators set up here, the 2 RSIs, and make sure I select the average line this time. Here we go. Let's get the slower RSI in there. All right, select that average line there. And connect that up. There we go. And let's see here. Let's open up the output window, or the rules window, sorry. So let's see here. And I'm going to put both of these on at most there. At most 2 points. Yeah, I guess a 2-point expansion is a little too much here. Let me knock this down to 1. Yeah. All right, let's cut that in half again. Wow. All right, cut it in half again. There. Well, this is not kind of the result I was looking for here, so let me just clear out this restrictive expansion and just go back to 0 there. Actually, put them back to at least there. Yeah. All right. And then combine them together with an AND node. There you go. That's really kind of where I was going there. And so now you can see when the two RSI average lines are within 2 points of each other and whether they are contracting or expanding. All right, so short output is when they're contracting, the long output is when they're expanding there. Right. Yeah. Although of course, obviously, when something's contracting, that doesn't mean to go short there. So let's configure this a little differently here. Let's identify only when they're expanding. There. All right. So this is when the two plot lines are really close to each other, but they are expanding away. All right. So yeah, and either the RSI is increasing together or the RSIs are decreasing together, like that. In any case, there we go. All right, let's see. It looks like Doug might have something else here. Yeah, so Doug's has a follow-up question here on the MACD here. Yeah, so he's saying instead of using two separate indicators, yeah, you would use the same indicator with two different plots. Correct. Yeah, so what you're doing with the MACD there, I guess, we could do the same thing with this RSI here. So I was just trying to mimic that slow RSI from Lizard Trader here, but let me copy this one here. And I'll paste the new one up here. And let's see. I'll adjust the name first. Yeah, I'll keep the 50. And we'll just compare the RSI line to the average line. And actually, that's it. Yeah, that's 1 point here. So let me correct the name. There we go. There we go. We're just going to compare the RSI line to the average line here. All right, so input A will be the faster line, which is just the RSI. So we'll select that. And then input B, that will be the average line, which is already selected, but let's go up here and match the period. Oh, and let me see, let's adjust that down and adjust that back down to its standard 3 period there, and connect that up. And well, all right, I guess I do need to add another RSI on this chart. And well, it looks like a 3 period is pretty darn tight. All right, well, let's go back to the 10 period, averaging. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's go back into Blood and I'll make that adjustment there. There. All right, so let's go into input A and change that smoothing average period and go into input B and do the same. There you go. And there we have it. There. All right. And let's see, do I have this on 1 point? And I do. All right. There. So whenever the average line is within 1 point of the RSI line, there you go. It's marked. So, oh, and one thing I haven't gotten around to yet is making sure that, when two lines are close to each other, just identifying proximity is not a trend direction. So you notice all of my outputs have a long and a short output together, right? So you're just identifying proximity, and right, it's going to be something else within some other condition within your system that's going to identify the trend, right? So this is a non-trend directional condition there. All right. Now, obviously, we could say, all right, well, let's look at the slope of the average line and use that as your trend direction, right? So, and then if you looked at it, so if you use the slope solver, combined a slope solver in here with an AND node, then you would get long and short signals. So, yeah. Now, yeah. So going back to the MACD question here, or the MACD example that Doug is using, right? So the input A is going to be the MACD line, and input B would be the average line, and checking if they're within X number of points. But that is exactly the same thing as just looking at the MACD histogram, right? And with that, so what would actually be technically ever so slightly faster is to use a threshold solver there, and MACD. All right, there's our MACD, and I'll just use the standard settings there. And we're going to check the difference or the histogram there. And so if we want to know when the MACD and the average line are within, I'm not even sure. Let's see here. Um, well, actually, as I'm building this out, I'm realizing here that this actually isn't all that much quicker. And let's see here. There we go. All right, that's what I'm looking for. Um, all right, so for a long output, I'm checking to see if the MACD histogram is greater than -2, and for a short, if the MACD histogram is less than +2 here. And so I know that the MACD line and the average line are within 2 points when we have both a long and a short output together. So now I do actually need another node here. So this doesn't prove my point that I thought I was making here. All right, so I need a long short modifier and yeah, put it in minimum mode, and there we go. There, so yeah, this actually took 2 nodes here to do the same thing with the threshold and looking at the histogram. Yeah, let's see here. All right, so let's see if we can do the same thing with a comparison solver. Another way of looking at this. So you'll notice input B, what I'm trying here is I'm using the fixed value of 0. Let's see. Well, no, actually that's not gonna work. Yeah, sorry. Sorry. It will. Yeah, put this back on the equals. We'll go 2 points. There we go. Click OK. And then go into input A, plug in the MACD, and select the diff. And there we have it. There we go. Yeah, so we're getting the same results here. Yep, there we go. All right, so Yeah, lots of ways to do this with the MACD, but that's only because the MACD is already calculating the delta between the MACD and the average. So it's actually outputting the delta there, right? So that makes the MACD unique versus an RSI, because the RSI doesn't have a difference plot, between the RSI line and the average line. So there. All right, now I got those things named, somewhat correctly. There. All right. So, so several ways to, crack this nut here. Let's see here. All right, it looks like Doug has some other comments here, maybe. Okay, yep, you're welcome, Doug. Yeah, so Doug, these Bloodhound files are always, 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 always saved. So, yep, always saved. Yeah, so all you need to do is just email support and ask for a copy of today's workshop file. And Michael, Michael, get you the links once everything is uploaded to, and let's see, let me back, close that. Sorry, let me get this page back here. There we go. All right, going back to Shark indicators here. If we go to support and template file, so once everything's uploaded, once this Bloodhound file is uploaded to the templates file, then you'll get a link back to that template files page. There. You'll get a link directly to this category here. Well, all right. Well, I'm guessing we're done with this question. I think we've kind of gone through every scenario possible. There. All right. Well, at least we had one question today, and wow, it's very surprising. We're at the 1 hour mark already, just with that simple question. Surprising how time flies sometimes. All right. Well, gentlemen, today has seemed to be kind of slow. Just that one question here that popped in. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer here and set it for like 10 minutes after the hour. All right, so it's 9 minutes or so. All right. So if I don't see any more questions by 10 minutes after the hour, I will assume we're done for the day and we'll wrap it up. All right. But if anybody has any more questions, please feel free. There's really no time limit on these workshops. Of course, there actually is, but I do try and keep these workshops open as long as possible to get everybody's questions answered. So, right. So, if anybody has any further questions, don't be deterred by the time limit here. That's just so I kind of have an idea of, you know, when to wrap things up when there's no more questions coming in. Right. So, all right. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for the next question to come in here, or not, or for the 10 minutes after to occur, then I'm just going to mute my microphone during that time. So again, if you have questions, let me know. Put them in the Q&A window there, and I'll get them answered. It's like Doug has another question for me here. Um, All right. Yeah. So Doug's question is trying to identify when low prices are stepping higher. And with Bloodhound solvers, since Bloodhound's always identifying or looking at, or sorry, Bloodhound's always calculating a, you know, uh, potential long condition and a potential short condition at the same time, then Bloodhound, a Bloodhound solver would also be identifying if high prices are stepping lower. So low prices stepping higher, high prices stepping lower. Mm, yeah, let's see here. So, let's see here. So, Doug, actually, I do have I, your last two sentences there. The first sentence is looking for a bar low that is then lower than the previous bar low. But then you said, for example, price low is stepping up. So that's, to me, that's the opposite of what you just said prior. Um, so yeah, so my question is, yeah, which is it? Are you looking for low prices to step lower or low prices to step higher? Yeah, low prices stepping up or stepping down? And just to put this in, and of course it didn't copy. Let's see here. All right. Let's see if that copy works. And nope, looks like, yep, VMware is the copy and paste is, yeah, well, buggy once again. Well, all right, I'll have to remember to try and fix that problem there. So I can't copy and paste into this VMware, unfortunately. Um, let's see here. All right, let me try this one more time. No. All right. Well, VMware strikes again, but then again, it's free. So, well, all right. So we'll have to go um, without actually seeing the actual question here. No. All right. So Doug is actually looking for low prices to step higher. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. So let's start a new logic template here for this question here. Mm, all right. So we're checking to see if the low of the current bar, right, is greater than the, I guess, lows of the last X bars there. All right. Yeah. So the example was given to me here was using the max condition there. And yeah, so let's test that. I don't think I have ever used the max and min condition. Yeah, I guess they are actually indicators, condition indicators within the comparison solver, but let's take a crack at it and see what happens. All right, so for long, we're going to check to see if the low price, compare the low price to the low price of X bars ago here, and that'll produce a long output. So the opposite condition would be using the high price to generate a short. So if the lows step higher, generate a long. If highs step lower, generate a short. Although, since we're using an indicator, actually that's not going to work. All right, so I'll just put them both on low here. All right, so for input B, that will be the max indicator. All right, so there's the max. And I guess we'll just look back 5 bars there. Call it good. Now, we have to feed the low price into the max. All right, so to do that, we're going to nest another indicator in there. All right, so let's go to the top of the list and go into Shark Indicators, and then go into Tools, and we need Chameleon. Right? So Chameleon allows you to take any of NinjaTrader's bar prices there and feed them into another indicator. Oh, and I double clicked on it by accident. All right, let's restart this here. All right, there's the max. Let me knock the period back down to 5. All right, and then go back up to Chameleon. So don't make the mistake I just did. Just a single click, and then we hit the nest button. Right, so now we can see Chameleon is the input into the max indicator there. And so let's click on Chameleon, and we want to feed the low price there into it. Now, unfortunately, if the max indicator would do both max and min, then we could feed the low and the high price into it, and we could, find higher lows at the same time as lower highs. But, the max indicator, isn't doing that. So, anyways, setting up Chameleon there to feed the low prices into the max indicator there. And so let's see here. The rules are, let's see, is the current low greater than the max indicator. Now, the max indicator, I haven't looked at the documentation for it in a long time, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to include, right, the current low price. So we need to use the displacement there of 1. So that way we don't include this low price, because because obviously the current low price is never going to be higher than the low prices of the last five bars. That includes the current low price. All right. So we do need to displace that by 1 there. And also, this only works for generating a long output. The short output, right, isn't going to work correctly. So let's set the evaluate to long only there. So if we wanted to identify stepping or lower highs, yeah, the high price is stepping lower, you would need a separate solver for that, you know, using putting the high price, putting the high price in here, and then using the min indicator and feeding the high price from Chameleon into the min indicator. And then of course setting this to short only, right? Short only. So all right. Now let's go and verify. All right, so here's the low. Is it higher than the last 5 bars? And so that is our maximum low price of the last 5 bars. So yeah, there we go. And of course that one's higher than that one. But here we go. This low is looks like a tick or two lower than that one. So there you go. And let's bring our little box back here. And yep, so that low is ever so slightly higher than that low right here, the low of this bar. There we have it. Now, there is actually an easier way to do this, but just a moment, let me take a drink of water here. My throat's starting to dry out. Yeah. All right, so this one's actually using the max indicator. So oops. Yeah, so using some programming terms again, it is the shortest way to, create a description there. All right, so this is the low of the current bar. All right, 0 is the current bar. So is it greater than the max indicator, which is looking at finding the max of the last 5 low bars, but we're looking at it 1 bar back, right? So 1 means 1 bar back, 1 bar ago. All right, so that way we don't include the current low within the max's look back period or search period, right? Look back period there, right? We don't want this low within this 5 bar look back. So so we set it to 1 bar back, which is what the displacement effectively does there. Right. Now, Yeah, the reason why this question is being asked is because with looking at the prices here, the one thing that's missing is a displacement function. So when right, you can see we have a look back period, and if I set that to 5 there, we don't have a displacement, so we can't start one bar back. Unfortunately, it's still missing that. We're still waiting on Jeremy to add some of these little, functions in. So, um, so because of that, yeah, so that's the reason why we don't just set input B to price, because there's no look back or displacement, right? Or start bars ago. So we're using a indicator, the indicator type, which does, oops, indicator, there we go. So when you're using an indicator, it does have a displacement, which allows you to start one bar back or start 2 bars back, whatever it is. So, all right, so we have that. Now, there is another way to do this, which is a little simpler. So let's copy that guy and we'll paste it actually here. Yeah, I'll put this one up here. All right. So remember, I used in this node up here, the first one, right? We fed Chameleon into the max indicator. That's how we got the low price fed into the max there. Now Chameleon actually has min and max built into it. So let's take a look at this. All right, so let's go into, oh, also first, let's set this to the high price. There we go. Set that to the high price. All right, so now going into input B, and we're just going to use Chameleon here. So let's go to Shark Indicators, go into Tools, and double click on Chameleon. There we go, there's Chameleon. Now Chameleon has a look back period. We're going to set that to 5, like so. And you'll notice that the names of these prices here actually say high bounds and low bounds. So this look back period means, actually, let's see. Actually, you know what? This is backwards, so maybe not. Hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, so the high bounds would be finding the highest high, or it would be returning the highest high of the last 5 bars. And the low bounds would be plotting the lowest low of the last 5 bars. So actually the conditions are backwards. So, yeah, all right. So actually, no, Chameleon's not going to work because the condition that's wanted is actually the reverse, the opposite of what Chameleon does. So actually, yeah, what's wanted is the lowest high, of the last X bars and the highest low of the last. So that, yeah, shoot, okay. So never mind. Um, All right. So let's see. I guess, yeah, what I'll do is I'll just build the opposite condition up above here. There. All right, so we're going to check to see that the current high price is less than, or right, lower than the lowest or minimum of the last 5 high prices. So for a short, all right, so we're going to leave that as high, and it doesn't really matter what we set the long to. So I don't know, just for consistency there. So this time, right, we're going to plot a low or a short output when the highs are stepping lower there. All right, so now let's go into input B and set this up correctly. So we're going to replace the max with min. All right, there's our min indicator. And once again, we'll do a 5-bar look back period. And then go into Shark Indicators, Tools, grab Chameleon, remember a single click, and then hit the nested input button. All right. And we will feed the high prices into it. Yeah, there we go. Feed the high prices in. Good to go. And let's see. That should do it. Let's take a look. Yeah, well, that high is definitely lower than the last 5 highs. Let's see, is that? Oh, okay, there we go. That high is lower than that high. All right. And let's see here. So that high is definitely the lowest, and the high steps lower, then the high steps higher, and here we go. So that high is definitely lower. So there we have it. And now to make a single unified condition, grab an OR node, right? Because both of these are the opposite conditions, and there we have it. So this condition here is the opposite of what Chameleon is doing here. So let's actually take a look at that. Into our indicators, let's open up Shark Indicators and Tools. Oh, and let's add Chameleon. And let's set our look back period to 5. All right, so we have the high bounds, turned on, and the low bounds turned on there, right? So the only thing we did was we just changed the look back period to 5. Add that to the chart, right? And there we go. We can see, right? Chameleon is tracking the lowest low of that look back period. So Chameleon is actually doing the opposite condition of what Bloodhound is doing. So Bloodhound is identifying the highest low of that look back period. So and there. So I'll just take that off. And all right. let's see. Yeah. All right, let me see if there's any follow-up questions on this. And let's see here. So Doug is, yeah, gonna test this out for an exit condition. Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Let's see here. There was a comment going back a ways. That is why Max is capturing the next higher low. Okay, well, anyways, yeah, no, I don't see any question there. And all right, last one here from Doug. Okay, now I think I had to read this a bunch of times here. All right, so yeah, so this follow-up question here is, all right, so just looking at these long only signals there. Let me stretch this open a little bit. There we go. Yeah, so Doug would like to add or generate a short whenever a long comes to an end. Yeah, so whenever the long condition comes to an end, so we would have a, let's see, what should I use here? Yeah, there we go. I have a short right there, and a short signal right there, and so on and so forth. Short right there. Yeah, short there. All right, well, I haven't done that in quite a long time. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm probably gonna experiment through this here. Let's see. I do remember we do need a one displacement function, so we need to take the original, the original signal, and then we're gonna displace it forward. So if I look at this, right, you notice everything jumps forward, right? Everything kind of goes back and then jumps forward. And then let's see. We need an XOR. There's the XOR. All right. So we can see we have a signal where all the squares are now, right? So that means we have an output after the original long output ended. And then, but we also need to get rid of this long output prior to where we want the short, right? So we have a long here and a long here, right? We have a long here before this long and long here, right? So we need to get rid of that. We can do that with an AND node, like so. Let's see. No, obviously that's not correct. Let's see where. All right, let's swap these logic nodes around here. All right. Okay, I think I had it right. I just need, there we go. All right, I think I just need to do a reload here. Oh, no. There's my mistake. That guy. There we go. All right. Yeah, there we go. So there is our, or that is a signal after the original, right, long output. Okay, so let's just mark that guy for good measure. All right, so again, let's take a look. All right, so take a look at the original output here, right? So there we go. All right, so we have a square whenever the long output comes to an end. All right, so we're using the XOR node to identify when there is no output, right? No output from the original node, but an output from the displacement, right? So remember the displacement here, this displacement takes the incoming signal and shifts it forward there. So there's OR node, right? It's marked the bar after it comes to an end, but also it's marked the first bar of the signal, where the signal starts, right? So let's mark that, right? So this is where the long outputs start, right? Long outputs start here, 2 bars prior to that. It starts right there. So we have the starting bar and we have the bar after. So we just need to get rid of the starting bar, and then that's what this AND node does. All right, it just removes the starting bar there. There. Now, and we want, or Doug wants this to be a short, so we just take this AND node and swap it. And there we have it. Or instead of swapping the AND node, we could just take the solver and swap that. And well, I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, I can't swap it. Yeah, because remember the evaluate is set to long only, so you can't swap that. It's not going to produce a short output. So yeah, yep. Normally, you could just swap the solver, right, and then the reversed or the swap signals, right, just propagate through there. But in this case, since we are dealing with a unique situation where the solver outputs long only, just go with my original thought here is just swap the last AND node, and there we have it. Yeah. All right, well, we got through another question here. Let me see if there's any follow-ups on this. Yeah. And there we go. All right, so there's a new comment or question. Yeah, so the question is, yeah, will this work in Blackbird as an exit signal? Absolutely. So, yep, just remember that, um, let's go back to this. Let's go back to this, both long and short signals here, right? We'll go back to this. So, right. So if you pipe these into Blackbird as entry signals, right? So we're short here. Let's put a little arrow, right? So we're short there. And I'll just mark some of these here. Actually, you know what? There. Now, here, this should be apparent that with Blackbird, you know, if you jump into a long trade and then you get a short entry signal, Blackbird's just going to reverse that long trade into a short trade there. So, all right, let's see here. Yeah, we got a bunch of these marked. Good enough. There. And so now, well, we don't actually have exits for these shorts here, but looking at the exits, right, there you go. So we're in a long trade, and so the opposite piped in as an exit will close out that long. But because there's a short entry, Blackbird would actually reverse the trade there. So there is another long, and so this short would exit that long trade. There you go, another long entry, and this short signal as an exit would close out that long trade. Another long trade, right? So on and so forth, right? Short exit signal closes out a long. Another long, short exit signal closes out that long. Yep. So there we have it. Yeah. So the one situation here, which is kind of unique, is we do have this exit of a long on the same bar that we actually have a short entry. So this exit would not interfere with this short entry. So this short entry would actually be taken, and then Blackbird would flatten the long and then enter in a short. Yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got in the Q&A window. All right, Doug, you're welcome. Good. I'm glad you actually had some questions today. So it gets a little boring in doing these workshops when there's no questions. All right. Well, gentlemen, let's see. We're approaching the 2-hour mark, so that's about average for Bloodhound. Okay, so yeah, I'm ready for the next round of questions to come in here. So if anybody has any further questions, just let me know and I'll get those answered. And let's see here. So I will wait until the top of the hour before assuming that we're done for the day. All right. So basically, you have, well, 9 minutes. Yeah, you have about 9 minutes to get some more questions in and keep the workshop going. Otherwise, if I don't see any more questions in the next 9 minutes or so, then I'll just assume that we're done for the day and wrap it up. All right, but if you have questions, keep them coming and we'll get them answered. Yep. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for the next round of questions to come in here, I'm just going to mute my microphone.